Hello everybody, my name is Max Browerman, and today I'm presenting on the Tisch high volume samplers. Obviously today's theme is 30 years of FEI, wow. So I thought it might be a fun idea to throw things back to 1995, give you guys an idea of some things that came out around that time period, put it into perspective really exactly how long we've been in business here. So along those lines, first thing from 1995, it's me, I'm 30. And I could sit here and I could tell you all about my accolades. I could tell you about where I went to college. I could tell you about the degrees that I have, but no one really cares about that. What you guys want is the hard-hitting facts. That's correct. I am the two-time back-to-back Turkey Bowl MVP. 2023, you can see me there on the left, holding the trophy up, throwing up the number one. And on the right, I actually had the honor to share the MVP trophy with one of my coworkers here at FEI, Jared Hanley. Now, if this was 50 years of FEI, it'd have been the perfect time to call out Jared Hanley because that man is 50 at the least. But I'm only 30, still young and spry. I'm the Turkey Bowl Travis Hunter out there with 3 receiving touchdowns and 1 99-yard interception pick six. So just giving you an update of who I am and what I'm about. But that's enough about me. Let's get on to the task at hand, and that is the Tisch high volume samplers. In these pictures here, you can see a couple of the Tisch high volume samplers in the field. These were both taken from the wildfire response out in Maui, where this equipment was used to help keep the communities around the debris cleanup removal sites safe. Tisch offers a whole wide variety of different samplers. There's the total suspended particulate sampler, otherwise known as like a TSP sampler. There's the PM10 sampler and the PM2.5, and that's just the 2 different cut point inlets for those samplers. And then there's also one of their samplers that does semi-volatile organic compounds as well as pesticides, and that one they call the puff sampler. Some of the common applications for a Tisch high volume sampler include things like regulatory compliance, construction sites, fence line monitoring, industrial monitoring, landfill monitoring as well, and then of course public health applications. This bad boy is the Tisch TSP sampler. Now, what this is typically used for is to find the total suspended particulate in the air, and it typically runs off of a brushed motor that's inside the main aluminum body. And that's kind of equivalent to like a Dyson vacuum machine, where it's just drawing air at a fixed rate, and then you load your sample in, and then as the air is drawn in, all that particulate matter gets caught on the sample. That sample media is typically pre-weighed, so you know what the weight is before you install the sample. Then once you're done with your sample, you would send that off to the lab where they can find out how much particulate matter was loaded onto the sample by taking the weight after the fact. Now what that's useful for is when you combine the weight of the particulate matter with the volumetric flow rate or the mass flow rate inside here, you can find out how much particulate matter was in the air. Now there's 2 different types of TSP samplers. There is the mass flow controlled, and then there's the volumetric flow controlled. And so the mass flow controlled works with a hot wire anemometer where it measures the flow continuously and actually will ramp the pump up and down inside there to make sure that your flow rate is remaining constant. Meanwhile, the volumetric flow controlled system just has one set flow rate that it runs at the entire time, and that's 40 CFM. One thing to note about these samplers is that all the Tisch equipment runs off of AC power. So this one right here in particular runs at 110 volt, 60 hertz, which is kind of what you would see if you were to just plug it into a wall AC outlet. But one other thing that I did want to mention is, as you saw me carry this thing in, it is a little bit hefty. It's 75 pounds is what they say according to the specs. But when you're trying to actually maneuver it around, get it into place, it is a little unwieldy. So keep that in mind when you're deciding where you want to set these up, how you want to get the equipment out there. Make sure that you have an access plan to your site so you can get these into position safely. So let's talk sample media. For the Tisch TSP sampler, it uses an 8x11 sample. You can kind of see of what the sample inlet looks like inside that red box there. 8x11 is your typical piece of letter paper, but they're obviously pre-weighed because these are really oftentimes used for gravimetric analysis. One of the more popular types of sample media is the glass fiber sample. Like I said, for gravimetric analysis, that's really good because it has fine particle retention as well as it's good at a high flow rate, and it's also got a good loading capacity so it won't become overloaded. Another type of sample media is grade 41 cellulose filter paper. Now that is a little bit less common than the glass fiber or the quartz filter paper, but the cellulose paper is typically used for quantitative soil and air analysis. So the next sampler that I want to talk to you about is the Tisch TE6070, which is used specifically for PM10 sampling. So while the last sampler that we spoke about, the TSP, collects all size particles, the TE6070 specifically collects particles that are 10 microns in diameter and less. And it does that by filtering out any particulates that are above 10 microns using the selective sample inlet. This is the PM10 selective sample inlet. Now this bad boy pretty much just sits on top of a TSP inlet, or excuse me, a TSP sampler, which is what makes it the 6070 and adds the PM10 selective cut point. Like I said, this has very similar applications to the TSP sampler, except that this one monitors specifically for dust that is PM10 and below. Now, while the TSP sampler was 75 pounds, this bad boy right here weighs 60 pounds in and of itself. So that's another thing that I want you to consider whenever you're thinking about getting this onto site. Obviously, we don't want any workplace injuries. That's the whole point of the HazWhopper. And so when you're thinking about carrying this onto site, maybe come up with a little bit of a plan, carry it with a buddy, get yourself a wheelbarrow, something to get this onto site safely so that one, the equipment arrives working properly, and two, you keep yourself safe as well. So talking about sample media used for the PM10 sampler, this runs the same sized sample media as the TSP sampler does. It actually has the same filter holder inside there. You can see it runs that same 8x10 filter. In fact, it uses the same filter media as well. The only real difference is that this one runs at a slightly different flow range from 36 to 44 CFM, whereas the TSP typically runs from 39 to 60 CFM. So a little bit about how the PM10 selective inlet actually works. Let me open this bad boy out for you so you can see. So there's all these tubes inside here. As the air is flowing inside, it's percolating, it's undulating, it's deciding where it's gonna go. Anything that is PM10, 10 micron and above is gonna settle out around these tubes. Anything that is smaller than PM10 is actually gonna get its way into the unit and be collected on the sample media. One thing to note though is since this is collecting all the dust in here that is above PM10, it does get pretty dirty, so you can expect a little bit of regular maintenance cleaning that out. So the third and final sampler that I'm going to be talking about is the TE1000, the polyurethane foam sampler, otherwise called the puff sampler. And so what the puff sampler is used for is where the TSP and the PM10 sampler were used to collect particulate matter. This one is used more for ambient air analysis and does sampling for things like pesticides or VOCs or PFAS. It still works on that same principle where it's drawing air in through a specific orifice, but it just collects for different things compared to particulate matter. So the major difference between the Tisch TE1000 puff sampler and the TSP and PM10 sampler is the sample orifice. So this is what that sample orifice looks like. Instead of the 8x10 letter paper samples, instead you've got these round samples that sit inside on the top here. Another difference is that the flow range is significantly higher on the puff samplers just because you have a smaller inlet. This runs from about 125 to 250 liters per minute. All right, so that covers the three major different types of Tisch high volume samplers that I'm gonna be going over today. Now for a little break, let's talk about things from 1995 again. Who here can guess what the #1 dog name in 1995 was? It's Max. It's my name. It's very creative. So moving on back into the Tisch maintenance and calibration things, all the Tisch samplers do need to be calibrated on site. And the reason I say that is because those calibrations are both temperature and pressure dependent. So if your site conditions are different from the conditions that we have here in our warehouse from when we're prepping your equipment, the readings in your calibration are gonna change. Now there's two different options for you to get as far as calibrators go. There's the kind of older style slack tube analog option, as well as a more updated digital calibration kit. And now we carry both of those at FEI. So no matter what your preference is, we're able to provide that for you. So now all the Tisch calibrations do require a little bit of math if you're going to do them by hand. Here on the screen, I provided some of the equations that Tisch has in the manual on how to run your calibration. And they're a little bit intense. It involves finding your standard flow rate. It involves finding your correlation coefficient using the least squares regression method. There's a whole lot of math here that is bringing me all the way back to my calculus classes in high school. And it's not necessarily things that I want to be back doing. So instead of doing that, let's go ahead and use the worksheets that are provided by Tisch to do all these calculations for us automatically. And so here you can see what those worksheets look like, as well as what the digital calibration kit looks like in the field. It actually gives you all of the readings that you need to plug right into your worksheet. You're able to open that up in Excel, and if you have your laptop in the field, you can do that all right there, and it will give you your correlation coefficient right off the bat without you having to do all those tedious calculations by hand. So now all those Tisch calibration worksheets are available online for free for you to download. It has a calibration sheet up there for all the different types of samplers that they have, as well as the different types of calibration kits that are offered. I would definitely recommend downloading these and using these in the field rather than trying to do all of that math by hand. This is a much simpler and a much more effective option. All right, and then the last thing from 1995, it's the McFlurry. I love them, you love them, everybody loves them. So right back into the Tisch equipment. If you are using the Tisch equipment in the field long term, one thing that you do need to know is that there is some regular maintenance expected. The motor lifespan inside these is finite. So they will only last 1,500 running hours. In fact, there's even more finite of a lifespan on the brushes themselves. Those only last about 500 hours. So you can expect that every 500 hours, you're gonna need to go out and replace the brushes inside the motors. And then every 1,500 hours, you're gonna have to go and replace the motors themselves. Now, each time you replace the brushes or replace the motors, you do need to perform a calibration as well. So there's just some things that you need to keep in mind as regular maintenance intervals for the equipment. So here's just an example of what those brushes look like after and before use. On the top, that's the one that we just took out of a motor. You can see how much shorter it is than those ones that are on the bottom that are brand new that are about to go into the motor. All right, so that concludes my talk on the Tisch high volume samplers. I want to thank you all at home for following along with me and bearing with my incredible jokes. Just a reminder that it's legally required for you to laugh at my jokes if you want credit today. So I better see a lot of people typing LOL in the chats and things like that. This really can't get back to me because I'm leaving on paternity leave here soon. So they can't make me refilm it. With that being said, I appreciate you all and hope you have a good rest of your Haswhopper.